Hangout session. So I hope there are some of you starting to join us, and we're really lucky to have a couple of awesome folks with me today. So why don't we start by introducing ourselves a little bit and let people have time to join in. So maybe Pablo, you want to begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Pablo Iglesias. I am a graduate of Bradley University with a degree in sports communication. I've been involved with AAJA for just over a year now. I'm the Jimmy and Sue Fong Yi Scholar recipient, one of two. Very proud to say that. And also part of the AAJA Sports Task Force. Currently what I do do some freelance work for Eagle News International. And I do a lot of NBA coverage in addition to the NCAA Men's Final Four in San Antonio this past April.
Great. All right, and Sharon.
Hey, Natasha. And so first of all, thank you to AJ for hosting this important session. My name is Sharon Chan. I'm the Vice President for Innovation, Product, and Development at the Seattle Times. I have been an AJ member since 1999, and I spent 12 years in the newsroom, so I began my career as a journalist, and I've been to many, many AJ conventions. Thanks for having me.
All right. I should also mention that Sharon is a former national president of AAJA as well. In fact, what years were you president, Sharon?
I was president from 2009 to 2010. Before that, I served on the advisory board and governing board. And before that, I was active in chapter leadership as Natasha Chen was when she was an AAJ Seattle chapter member.
Great. Yeah. And I remember that distinctly because Sharon was president during my very first convention in 2009. So that made a strong impression on me when she gave her speech at convention. My name is Natasha Chen. For those who don't know me, I am currently in DC. And I am a correspondent for CNN News Source, which is the affiliate service of CNN. And as Sharon mentioned previously, I was in Seattle and participated in the Seattle chapter of AAJA, basically as a glorified party planner, vice president of events. But I have enjoyed being a part of AAJA since 2008. So I've been going to most of the conventions since then. And I think all of us are here today because we've had such a positive experience of, really a give and take between us and AAJA, really fueling our careers here, fueling friendships, and we want to make sure that other people get the most fullest experience out of the conventions like we did. So I think in watching the conversation last year, they started with talking about first convention experiences. So I thought that's a good place to start. Pablo, you said you've been involved for maybe 1 year. So have you been to one convention so far, or has it been more than that?
Yes. So last year was actually my first convention in Philadelphia. I blanked out of where it was real quick, but yeah, I mean, so I actually knew about AAJ in 2011. I'm a JCamp alum, and from there, I still had my first convention experience last year, and it was so overwhelming, but in all the right ways, I think. Especially, who was fresh out of college, really wanting to dive into journalism, and to get all the resources to meet so many great people. I thought it was such a phenomenal experience to kind of sum up how it was basically like that right now.
So Pablo, I have to ask because I'm thinking back to my first convention, which was 2009 in Boston. Did you know anyone before you stepped into the Philadelphia hotel?
I knew very few people. Of course, once again, being a JCamp alum, I knew 3 people who were part of my JCamp class. I think it was, Jacqueline Lee, Amy Cho, and Ben Bartenstein, all who I knew. Oh, and then also some of my counselors as well. So I reconnected with them, but other than that, I think altogether I knew 6 or 7 people. And the big thing about me is that I always love to embrace, meeting new people and stuff like that. And I mean, that's exactly what this organization and the convention is all about. If you're still new to the organization, of course, getting to meet so many dedicated people within the journalism background and field, it was such a great experience for sure.
Yeah, I can understand how that would be daunting for somebody who may not know many people when you're walking into a big room like that. At least in the first opening reception, I actually did not know a single person having to do with AAJA when I went to Boston. It was kind of a rough time for me. I was about 3 months into my first reporting job, and I really went to this convention trying to seek out some kind of guidance, because I had studied broadcast journalism and was, getting this great opportunity to report on air, but it was so difficult that I really thought about giving up. And somebody, and I can't remember who, suggested that I kind of maybe look to this organization and see if there were things that they could offer and help me with. So I knew no one, and it was kind of a rough time. In fact, I brought my mom and brother to Boston, and they stayed with me just because they were like, well, you don't know anybody at this thing, so maybe when you're done with the day, you can hang out with us. It turned out that I really didn't need to worry, because as soon as I got there, everyone's there for the same reason.
Absolutely.
To kind of, learn more about the craft, to meet other people who are doing the same things as you. And as soon as I walked into the small market broadcast workshop, which George Kiriyama ran at the time, and ran for a number of years, I don't know if he's still doing it this year, but all of a sudden it was like, okay, I am not alone in my experience. I am not alone in this field. There are plenty of people who want to help and who are also, equally struggling. And that particular class, that workshop, was pretty unique in the sense that over the years, we all continued to come back to conventions, and we call ourselves that class of '09, even though it wasn't really a class. But we became really good friends, tracking each other and supporting each other through our climb through different market sizes. So that first convention I credit for the reason that I'm still here in broadcast. So that was my experience. Sharon, what was your first convention like?
Well, I think I had the worst experience out of the three people here. So my first convention was in San Francisco in, I think, 2000. And I sort of knew two people that were going. Like, they worked at the Seattle Times with me, but I wasn't really like super good friends with them. Like, I didn't know them that well. So to save money, I stayed with a friend in Emeryville. So I wasn't at the convention hotel. I think I blew off a lunch. There used to be a student like scholarship lunch. I think I blew off the gala too. I'm not even sure if I went to the opening reception. So all of these things are really, and I didn't go back to the convention for I didn't go back until 2003, but I mainly went because I was a reporting resident, is what they call it now, at the Seattle Times. And I wasn't sure I was going to get hired full time. So I felt it was important for me to work the job fair and build relationships there. So I did that. I don't think, I got maybe a fraction of what the value of the convention brings to you that Natasha just highlighted, that ability to connect with people, form a support network, get advice. So I missed out on that. I would say the highlight of that conference for me was meeting Dith Pran. So Dith Pran was a New York Times photographer who was one of the characters in The Killing Fields, which is a movie about journalism in Cambodia in the 70s during the war. And he was this like kind of incredible historical figure I had read about. And I just ended up talking to him outside the job fair in the hallway. He had all the time in the world to talk to young journalists. And he's dead now, but I just remember that being the key thing about going to the conference. There are all these incredibly accomplished veteran journalists there who are really there because they care about helping other people get into the industry, giving you advice, connecting to you to resources. And the most important lesson I learned out of that convention and the one since, it's important to show up for the events, even though you don't know anyone.
Yeah, it's really not as scary as you might think it is, no matter how many people you know in your particular panel, in the room that you're walking into. Everyone is at this event to know new people. So that's the whole point. Everyone's going to be open to meeting you, shaking your hand, getting to know your name. Before we continue, I just want to point out that we do have a hashtag tonight for this Hangout, hashtag AAJA Hangout. And if you have any questions at all about how the convention works, about your particular situation, we'll try to answer in a way that applies to a lot of people here. Please tweet at us, tweet at AAJA with the hashtag AAJA Hangout. And we'll try to interact with you throughout this hour and make this useful for you. One thing I forgot about that first convention, that is the reason my hair is this short. I don't know. My mom reminded me of this. I came home from the job fair in Boston, and I said, Mom, this person looked at my reel, and they gave me some good feedback, and they thought that my hair was a little bit long, and I can't remember the exact reasoning, but she had a good point. So I went out and got my hair cut, like during the convention. I just found a place in Boston to get my hair cut. And you know what? It's worked for me ever since. So there we go. Anyway, I just, what I want to ask about the things that you are all looking forward to at this particular convention. Are there things that are highlighted for you on the schedule when you look at it as, I must do that, and why that is?
Yeah. So yeah, I think for me, the big thing that I really loved about the convention is, especially with my first year, the camaraderie, just meeting so many different people once again in the industry, who I got to meet, and how it just kind of became like that spiral effect too. So hey, I know this person who wants to talk all of that. So sorry, I'm kind of running a little bit in circles, but anyway, I think, like I said, in terms of just getting to see everybody again, we always keep in touch. The big thing too, whenever I talk to a lot of fellow AAJ members, is we end out saying see you in Houston, and that's like we're really looking forward just to seeing each other. In terms of events, Sports Task Force has a lot that's going on. I am almost a huge baseball fan. Forward to the very end of the trip, but the Astros-Mariners game that we have sporting, that's always something big. The barbecue night too that Bleacher Report will be hosting. There's a whole lot within just Sports Task Force too that we're doing. On top of that, all the other affinity groups, whether it's the local chapters as well, there's so many different events that are going on too. And if you're coming into this as a first year, I would definitely recommend just talk to people. You never know what you're going to find out about. And it's even just word of mouth as well, that people just kind of talk about spreading events, and they may even happen in the hotel lobby, or even just people just hanging out. You never know, once again, who you're going to run into, and yeah, what events you may hear of, just once again through word of mouth.
Before we go too much farther, I want to make sure folks who are not that familiar with AAJA, that they know that these affinity groups we're talking about are basically subgroups of people within AAJA with specific interests. So Pablo's talking about the Sports Task Force. These are people primarily doing sports journalism. I do a lot of things with other broadcast reporters, and so broadcast is an affinity group. So there will be things specific to your area of journalism or your area of interest for you to find. Sharon, do you want to talk about what things that you want to highlight from the schedule?
Sure. I mean, the things that well, if you're a first-time attendee, I would definitely go to the new attendee mixer. That's on Wednesday night, because then you'll meet a couple of people there, and you can go straight from there to the opening reception. I'm definitely going to be at the opening reception. I'm definitely going to take my own advice and show up at the events. So I will be at the opening reception. I will be at the gala. I will be at karaoke night. I'll be at the silent auction. And all of these are really just chances like where everyone is showing up, where you can meet a ton of people at once. And for me, I mean, I've been to the convention many times, so there are specific people I want to see. I'll start emailing them. I actually just started emailing them today based on remembering I was supposed to show up for this hangout, to start being like, hey, are you going? Let's find time to sit aside and talk. The things, I'm organizing a session on new business models that can sustain journalism on Thursday at 11 a.m. So I would be remiss if I didn't promote that. I'm doing that with Lance Davis from Bankrate. I'm really looking forward to that. I am just looking forward to, I mean, I think like it's really important to prepare a few things when you're headed into a conference, right? Like, what are your goals? I mean, is it like mine was when I was a 3-year resident, to build other relationships towards a job when that internship ended? Is it to get, like Natasha said, to get advice as a broadcast journalist working in your first market? Is it kind of to further your career like Pablo in sports journalism? Like, it's really important to think through what that goal is and try to crystallize it into 1 or 2 sentences. Who am I? I'm Pablo. I'm a Bradley University graduate and I'm doing this. And what is it you want to get out of this conference? Like, have those 2 sentences really ready, because there's a lot of kind of work that can happen in 3 days where you meet someone, you say, this is my goal. Do you have any advice? Is there anyone I should meet at this conference? And they can turn around and make a connection for you at that very reception. Or like, this has happened before where someone says to me, I'm looking for X opportunity. The next morning, I'm talking to a recruiting editor or someone who says, I'm looking for this type of candidates. And it's possible for me to actually text and connect those people that very same day. So I think it's really important for you to like think through your first time, like whatever your goal is, how to crystallize that into 2 sentences.
That's a really good point. For me, I'm also going to plug a panel that I'm going to be a part of also on Thursday. I'm glad it's not at the same time as Sharon's. It's going to be 2:00 on Thursday, and it is really more for broadcast folks on how to transition to your next TV market. I'm also excited that this time I'm going to be part of the CNN team coming to the convention. So I will be at the career fair at the CNN booth for quite a number of hours. I think like the first half of Thursday and the second half of Friday. So for those of you who are watching our live stream here and don't know people, you now know 3 people. You know Pablo, Sharon, and me. And
that's right.
You should, if you see us at convention, you should come up to us and say, hey, I saw you during the Hangout. We don't know your faces, but we will be happy to meet you. And you can find me easily at the career fair at the booth. So please do approach us for that. We did get one question ahead of this Hangout from Caitlin, who's asking about kind of pivoting from a background in IR and politics into business, finance, journalism. I think a lot of people who are coming to convention, maybe your purpose is to find that pivot of how do I transition from one thing that I'm doing to a slightly different thing. And what Sharon just said about forming your 1 or 2 sentence pitch, I think is really, really important to do that, right? So I would go further to say, before you arrive in Houston, you maybe take a few minutes and write down a 20-second pitch of who you are and what you want. And then go a step further, create a 1-minute version of that, and then create a 2-minute version of that, because you might end up having longer conversations. You might have somebody listen to your 20-second version of you on the first night, and by the final night, there might be somebody who says, you know what, I'm thinking that person should talk to you, and that turns into an interview. Like, you never know. So have different versions of the you pitch ready to go in various depths.
Can I add to that?
Yeah,
Natasha?
go ahead.
I mean, I think that's a really great point, and thank you for adding on to that. I would also expand on that is then like, think about what are the other accessories you need for that, right? Like if you're a broadcast person, is your stand-up video ready? And I'm not a broadcast journalist, so is this like a DVD thing now? Is it like, here's a link to my YouTube reel? Whatever it is, you want to be ready to either, if it's physical, hand it to that person, or be like, here, I am texting you a link right now on my phone, right? Or here is my resume LinkedIn in a bit.ly format that I'm going to give to you. Where's your business card? Like, business cards are like, at a conference, are gold, right? Like, it allows me to figure out who it is I'm talking to you, or for you to figure out who you're talking to. Like, if you didn't catch it at the very beginning when they started talking to you. So I think business cards are really key, and they're like $10 on Vistaprint. Like I highly recommend getting a box of those made. Do you have if you're a reporter, do you have a Dropbox folder that has like your 3 best clips with your resume in it? Do you have that URL ready? So think through, not everyone's goal is to find a job. That's fine. So, but like there's probably a little accessory link, something that you are ready. Maybe it's a pre-drafted email you copy and paste directly into an email right after you met someone and email it to them. So think through that.
Absolutely. I think another thing that is helpful for someone trying to, not just someone trying to pivot into a different type of job, but really anyone trying to further progress their position, strategically choose how you're going to use your time, which panels you're going to, and balance that with how much time you want to spend at career fair. For me, I look at the schedule of the convention. I get all excited about workshops, but that year, if I am trying to find a new job, maybe more of my time should be at the career fair, and I should be looking at who all is attending the career fair. I'm curious, Pablo, to know, in your first convention, what was your balance between workshop and career fair?
Yeah, so I actually attended a workshop on my very first day, and it was the NBC University workshop, and it was a great experience, especially my group as well, and everyone around. We were all kind of at different levels in terms of the reporting career. Where I was just starting out, there were some people at my table that had done this for X amount of years already and wanted to just figure out a different way to get their craft, or not. Sorry, let me backtrack real quick. To basically, send in some of their work, figure out, hey, I've done this piece before. How can I make this better? So really trying to improve their stuff as well. And yeah, when I kind of figured out that balance, I knew right off the bat, though, too, was getting to meet people once again at the career fair. That was the big thing that I wanted to do. I wasn't able to stop in on the first day because of the workshop, but following that, the rest, every single day I could attend that career fair. I did that, right as the doors opened. I think they start at 9 o'clock in the morning, if I'm correct. So yeah, if you can get in as soon as you possibly can, that is a big thing as well. It may take a little bit, I guess 9 a.m. is not necessarily super early, but it is right at the beginning. But that's what I would still highly recommend, is get there early, so that way you have as much time as you possibly can to talk to any of the recruiters that are there. If you know that there is a company, which most likely there's going to be somebody that's going to catch your eye, I say go to them first, talk to them, let them know who you are. In terms of bringing your reel too, everybody, or almost every recruiter that I talked with as well, wanted to see your reel, and they asked me to, unless there was a wait list and they gave you a specific time, they almost wanted to see it right there. So if you have an iPad, if you have your laptop too on you, make sure too, though, that it's not necessarily too heavy, because you will be probably looking at around almost the entire day. But I would highly recommend, having that copy on an iPad or a laptop, so that way it pops up too, because sometimes you never know, with so many people on the Wi-Fi, there could be some connection issues. So make sure that you have a hard copy too, is my piece of advice for sure. So that way you don't run into any internet issues if people want to see your reel, and if you're in the broadcast or looking into the broadcast industry.
I think just going back to Caitlin's question, I mean, actually the convention is a great place if you're looking to pivot into journalism from another industry. I remember at that 2009 Boston convention that was Natasha's first convention, I remember meeting Archit Seshadri there. And Archit was a consultant then, like, who wanted to become a journalist. And now Archit's on CNN?
He's an anchor in India.
Yeah, I mean, he is... Yeah. Had several journalism jobs since 2009, and he basically went to the conference, met a ton of people, kind of figured out a way based on that advice and those relationships to pivot into journalism.
Absolutely. And one of those things, one of the key things that you want to do, no matter what your position and what you're going for, is spend some time having conversations one-on-one with people, and this can happen really anywhere. Obviously, it can happen in a career fair because you're going up to people, up to recruiters at booths. But also, these conversations happen in the elevator. These conversations happen in the coffee shop, in the lobby of the hotel. These conversations happen after the panels are done, after each of the workshops are finished. You know, you may see that a workshop runs from 2 to 3. Well, at 3 o'clock, guess what's going to happen? A horde of people are going to exit the room, and a bunch of people will try to crowd up to the front to try and introduce themselves to the people at the panel. This is expected. It's okay to do that. It might be hard to get in there because oftentimes the room has to change out for a new panel to come in. But that's where you say, like, hey, this is who I am. This is where the 20-second pitch is really important. Exchange your information. Let's get coffee tomorrow, or let's meet up and have further this conversation over email. So go up to people after panels, go up to the career booth folks, and don't be afraid to start conversations, you know, in line for coffee and in random places.
Yeah, everyone's wearing a badge around their neck. So you know who's there for the conference. So that is just licensed to be like, hey, how are you finding the conference? What are you here for? I'm doing blah, 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 blah. And this is what I'm looking for. What advice do you have for me? What should I do with my convention experience? Also, with panels, I find that a good strategy is if I want to make a connection with a panelist, I'll usually do it before the panel starts because they get mobbed afterwards. So I just try to get there a few minutes early. And unless they're the person setting up the PowerPoint, they're usually like open to me going up and being like, hey, it's good to see you, blah, blah, blah.
That's a really good point. I would also say that I sometimes make a stronger connection with someone at a panel who's on a panel if I had actually stood up and asked a question during Q&A, because then they remember you getting up and they remember your face and what you were wearing and what question you asked. So that makes a stronger impression. Obviously, don't just ask a random question for the sake of asking it, but, you know, think about that. Make a thoughtful presentation there. Pablo, do you have any thoughts about, sorry, go ahead.
Also the lobby bar, if you're over 21.
Yeah.
If you're looking to connect and network, the lobby bar is like a must place to stop in at each night of the conference. I'm
yeah, Pablo,
is Pablo here? Oh, okay, yes, he's here.
Yeah, so this is actually, I want to bring Pablo in to talk about barbecue night and stuff like that, because we're talking about things that are now not necessarily listed on the official schedule right now when you're looking on the website, but so much of the connecting happens outside of the 9 to 6 schedule, right? It's after the last workshop is done. So Pablo, what kinds of activities do you know about that are happening after 6?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot that's going on. So for instance, for Sports Task Force, right on Thursday night, we do have the Bleacher Report Barbecue Night, which is a let's see, so barbecue Texas style this time, the last barbecue, but since we're in Houston, we're in Texas, we're going to be doing a little bit different style. We're going Texas barbecue this time, and it's $27.99 for a ticket. You can RSVP actually if you go to the AAJA Facebook page. There is a Facebook event that leads you to a Google Docs link. Very easy, straightforward. And it's $27.99 once again a ticket, and that includes 3 meats, 3 sides, and you either get slow dough bread or a dessert. So that's a pretty good deal. And then on top of that, it's a great networking event too, of course. And then the AAJA Sports Task Force will also be holding raffles, so you can win some sports memorabilia. And all the proceeds from the tickets sold in the raffle will help us fund scholarships. For instance, part of the one that I received through Don Yee, who is a NFL sports agent, that once again just helps the AAJA Sports Task Force fund some scholarships. So that's just what's on Thursday night. And that was a great night for barbecue. Once KBBQ night last year was just a great experience because once again, you just get to meet people in a more relaxed setting. You get to have dinner, you get to talk, you just get to chat. It's not, hey, here's my resume or anything. Of course, you'll probably still exchange business cards, but it's more of small talk and just chatting with people. And what I would recommend if you happen to go there too, there's a group of us in one section. So get up, walk around, talk to people at different tables. That's what everybody did. And that's how you just end up meeting more and more people. The next thing I want to talk about too for the EF events is the Summer Jam hosted by, that is a 21 and over event. So that's going to be hosted at, I believe it's Clee, which is the Houston nightclub. And the nice thing too about the nice, they're all within a mile and a half of the hotel that can be hosted at. So you are going to be very close, as I'm sure August heat in Houston is just going to be insane. So you're going to be really, really close to these events. But anyway, the tickets for Summer Jam 2, once again, also help fund scholarships. And then finally, on Sunday afternoon, if you haven't booked your flight home yet and want to attend the Houston Astros Seattle Mariners game at Minute Maid Park, that's going to be a 1 o'clock start. And we are also selling tickets for that too. Once again, word of mouth, let people know. That's how, honestly, I got into so many different sports task force events, was just meeting Howard Chen, actually, who is a huge part in the sports task force. And then from there, he introduced me to this person, said, hey, we have this event going on too. He would text me nonstop letting me know. And I just threw myself out there too. And I was like, hey, yeah, I want to be at this event. Try to make yourself as visible as possible, basically. Make sure that once 9 to 6 is over, it's already a long day, but don't hang out in your hotel room after. Make sure you do an absolute huge effort to try to make sure to go to these events at the end of the day.
Caitlin, if you're coming to the conference, for tweeting the first question at us, I will sponsor your ticket to the Texas barbecue.
Woo!
So if you're
That's
out there, you're
right
coming, like $27.99 covered, find us on Twitter.
Oh my, that's awesome. Speaking of these events, you're probably wondering, if you're not that familiar with navigating this, how you find out when everything is happening. If it's possible, can we get a little help maybe seeing that website? I believe it is AAJA18.sched.com. So that's, there we go. It's AAJA18.shed.com. So this is the site where you can kind of see everything laid out in a sort of organizable form here, because we've got each day and then each of the workshops laid out like this. Now they're color coded. If you just hover over each of the titles, you can get a little more detail on what's going to happen.
Oh, that's a good one.
Sharon's
program. That's a really good one.
So, and each of the descriptions will also kind of give you a sense of the target audience, right? Like whether this is for entry level, whether this is for people in, broadcast or people covering politics. You'll get a bigger sense of that there. Exactly. So what I like to do is I actually downloaded the app for Shed. This isn't entirely necessary, but I think for me, it's easier to look at. Shed is a third-party app, SCHED. And I just downloaded it and logged in to my AAJA login for this. And I can then pick out like those little dial buttons on the left of each of these. I just like clicked the ones that I know I want to go to at that particular time. And then the Shed app will just tell me what's next. So I could just look at that all day. Now, if you don't want to do this, that's fine too. Or I'm sorry, I said .com, I think it's .org. If you don't want to do this, obviously, when you go register at convention, you're going to get a hard copy paper version of this. So you can, if you want to go old school, you can highlight and circle those in your pamphlet too. Speaking of things that we want to, things that you will have in your hands, especially after you get to the registration booth, you're probably going to be given a lot of paper and some sort of bag. How about let's talk for just a second about physical logistics of this. Some of you may not be staying on property. Some of you may be dressed up to, be camera ready, whatever the case may be. Maybe Sharon, talk about when you wake up in the morning, what do you carry with you to be ready for the day?
Okay, well, I have my badge. And what I'll do is I'll shove a bunch of business cards in my badge. So then I'm like kind of hands-free. I don't have to root around in my bag. I usually, don't know what my kit is going to be this year. But if I were like, originally when I was like job searching and working the job fair, then I would have a bag with like 10 sets of my resume and clips in there. So it was always like a really fun adventure. I mean, Kinko's was like an annual, or sorry, FedEx Kinko's now was like the annual pilgrimage, like the weekend before the AAJA convention, where I made all sorts of copies. And even though we're kind of working in a digital era, I think that's still really good practice if you're a writer, like you're a reporter, because ultimately you're going to talk to people at a booth and you're going to want to show them your clips and talk about those clips. You could also go in with an iPad like Pablo has done. What else is in my kit? I kind of a little notebook just for taking notes. Usually there'll be one. I try to move away from the convention bag as soon as possible because it's easy for me to forget it somewhere or for someone to pick it up because everyone has the same convention bag. And then comfortable shoes, that's a key. And then what else? It's Houston, so it's gonna be super cold because it's going to be really hot outside, but super highly air conditioned inside. So some kind of sweater or shawl.
That's a good note right there. I forgot about that. It's going to be really cold inside.
Yeah.
To add to that, I would say for those of you in TV, I know you want to look very presentable, look like you are hireable right now to get on the air. And I get that that means ladies, you might be in heels. I get that. But you're also going to be in them all day. I think that the way that I would go with that is stick some flats in your bag. At some point, you're going to want those, and it's okay to switch off. I do think that the convention bag point is a good one. Pablo made a point about bringing the iPad. I would say I've noticed that career fair booths in general now all have some kind of screen to be able to play the reels that you want to present or pull up the website for your site. So that is not maybe as pertinent as I think I would have thought years ago. However, I will say that the Wi-Fi that Pablo mentioned in these conventions is sometimes hit or miss. Sometimes it's hard to pull up a website. So definitely the hard copies is a good thing to bring for that very reason. Sometimes the Wi-Fi is not going to be able to pull up your site. I would even, if you don't want to carry around discs, I don't think anybody uses discs anymore, but I would just have my stuff on a thumb drive. Like just have it really tiny, very light, be able to have that as a backup if the internet's not working. Pablo, what are some things that you must bring when you head out the door in the morning?
Yeah, when let's see. So when I left in the morning, I walked to and let's see. So I don't know how I did it, but I had a tie on, and then either my slacks or suit pants, and it was a little bit of a warmer walk, but made it through there. In my backpack, like I said, I had my laptop, a notebook, basically the same points that Sharon hit on. A lot of things, just making sure that you do, of course, also have something to write with too. If you don't have a notebook without a pen, you got to make sure that you do have that. Once again, though, too, let's see, as many resumes as you could possibly get in moderation, I think, but you never know who you're going to run into. Get your business cards in order. I also packed, some gum, bottled water too, just in case. Those are some small things that I brought along with me as well.
And along those lines, there have been times, especially when I was up toward the end of a TV contract and knew I had to get a new job, that I would be working that career fair every possible minute that I skipped lunch. You might want to pack a couple granola bars. That's for the intense moments, but for the most part, hopefully you can take a break and get an actual bite to eat. We have a question coming in now from Amy Wong. Any tips on good follow-up emails? Should I send them soon after we meet or after the convention is over? How do I maintain a professional relationship with someone who may live far away? That is a fantastic question. For me personally, I should say that these conventions have led me to 2 of my jobs. And that is not an uncommon story. I got my job with Cairo 7 in Seattle from the 2016 convention, just kidding, 2012 convention. And I got my CNN job currently by meeting the folks at the 2016 convention. in both of these cases, I think I emailed the people I met the day after, but in other situations, I've also waited until like the Sunday as I'm leaving to fly back home. Like at the airport, I'll just knock out a few emails. People are going to be getting a lot of these emails, so make sure that whatever you're writing has something memorable from your exchange, so they remember who you are, and also to have a furthering purpose, not just like, hey, think of me next time you're, it's got to be a little bit more than that. Maybe asking for more in-depth feedback. I ended up continuing to follow up with folks, not just, I guess it had to be a follow-up because I had something new to share. So for example, yes, I would say a quick thank you email right after I met them, the day after. But maybe 2 to 3 months after, I had a new story that I was really proud of. And I would then send that story to that person and say, hey, would you take a look at this thing that I just worked on? I think it's, I've spent a lot of time on it, would love to know what you think. So there is a purpose to continuing that conversation. And of course, remember to try and, figure out if you're ever going to be in that same city that the person's in to, say, let's grab a coffee. Sharon, what about you? When do you send emails back?
Well, I just want to thank Amy for joining us on the Hangout. She's an intern at the Seattle Times and just graduated from the University of Washington. So I usually try to come back. I usually try not to send follow-up emails while I'm there. Right, just because like people are super distracted, they're on their phones. When they come back, they got to sift through all their work email as well. So usually, I will come back, and within the week after the conference, I will make a point of hammering out all my follow-up notes. I thought Natasha had great points. The only thing is I would add to that is if you're sending, sometimes the purpose can be like, here's what I'm looking for, and if I'll plan to follow up in the next 3 months, if you don't mind, with like some of the stories that I'm working on. I mean, I would probably do something like that, like kind of like set it up like I'm gonna follow up with you in a quarter, because I find that people generally tend to be good with the follow up right after the conference, but 3 months after, like almost no one is following up, which may be when they have a job opening that they're hiring for.
It's super true. And the way that I would help yourself remember this, I just use whatever reminder app you may have on your computer or your phone, like just that sends you the little notification when it's time. Like I will literally sit down and put down a reminder, email, Joe Smith. If the convention is August, like email Joe Smith November 1st, and that thing should pop up for you on November 1st, and make sure that you follow through, because that goes a long way. Like Sharon said, a lot of people don't continue following up. How about you, Pablo?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Sharon said, and not necessarily following up during convention. I would for sure at the most wait no more than maybe 3 days at following convention when you get back. Even what I plan on doing the day I get back actually is going through all the business cards that and connections that I've made, and just emailing, sending LinkedIn requests, all of those different types of things, and just connecting with those people once again. And actually, some advice I received from Carrie Chow, who is actually just currently now moving from ESPN Sports Center now over to the Undefeated. I actually received some great advice from him. Was not only when you get business cards, is that a big thing, but take a couple moments real quick, go off to the side, write 3 big things that stuck out to you during the conversation that you had with that person, and then reference that in your follow-up email saying, hey, it was great talking to you about this. Or like, for instance, I spoke with Neil Scarborough, who was the one of the VPs at Fox Sports, and he actually he knew Bradley University, which I was like, my school's like of 5,000 people, so I was so amazed. And I just told him too in the email when I responded back to him, saying, hey, appreciate the Bradley Braves shout out too. And then he responded back with me, great meeting you, Pablo, go Braves. So those are just some small things, and people appreciate that too, is that you remember these conversations. And once again, just to hammer out this specific phrase, that really does go a long way. And versus the, hey, next time you're in Chicago, let's connect sometime or let's grab some coffee, which is a good message, but it may not necessarily be that same personal tie whereas if you remembered something specific from the conversation you had with them.
I mean, to address Amy's second question is of how do you maintain a professional relationship with someone who may live far away? If if it's not in the cards for you to travel to the city where there are, I do find that coming to the AJ convention year after year is actually a way to keep in touch with someone who lives far away. I mean, like coming to the convention for the first time is like going to a gym class for the first time, right? You're like, I'm going to try Pilates, and it's super awkward, and like you're like really sore, and you don't know what you're doing. You look kind of silly, and then after a while, you get a little stronger, you gain a little confidence, and pretty soon you're the one who's helping newbies coming in, right? And like so like the conference is kind of like that. It's actually like the more you go, it kind of you get exponential returns on it. There are people I have breakfast with every year at the convention now, and we've never actually lived in the same city, or I've never been to that city and seen them there. They've never been to my city and seen me there. It's really just based on us seeing us at the AJ convention every single year.
And that's part of the fun, I think. I want to also, this kind of transitions into maybe advice on the best thing that happened to you at a convention, maybe the best type of interaction experience that you've had, and also on the flip side, a cautionary tale from something you observed. If you have like a best and worst kind of thing to share, either of you can go first if you think of something.
Ooh,
okay, before I go there, I'm going to let Pablo think about this for a minute while actually, I just want to add something. Is we've talked a lot about how to be prepared when you hit the ground at the convention, but there's a lot of work you can do before the convention to get prepared, right? Like you can connect with your chapter leaders. If you live in a place where your AAJ chapter is, ask them to review your stand-up tape, or ask another just veteran broadcast member in your chapter to review your stand-up and give you feedback on that. Are these the right clips I have in here? Same thing for your resume and your portfolio and your clips. If you're not in a place where there's an AJ at-large chapter, where there's an AJ chapter, there are at-large advisory board members who are basically their job is to serve members who are not in cities with chapters. I would reach out to them. Just go to aaj.org, click through about, and go into board members, and you'll be able to find their contact info through there. So there's just like Amy and I are getting together, I think later this week, to go through her resume. So, like use the AJ network before you even get there. And then you'll at least even know someone in advance. So Pablo, what was your best experience?
Let's see. So actually thinking about it, I do have a best and cautionary tale too. It was a little bit, but I'll start with the best one. I'll start with the best first. I would definitely say, let's see. I guess it was a combination for me. Once again, just meeting everybody that had been sports journalists, had that background. Actually, one of my really good friends now who we met through AAJA Sports Task Force, Josh Tolentino. He's actually the big reason why I am now a co-correspondent with him now for Eagle News International. So we've done a lot of coverage together. Originally started off as his producer, and then from time to time, now we just both split on air, talent air situation. So, meeting everybody in general, it was just such a crazy thing too. So just trying to get into sports or something like that, and just meeting a bunch of different people, I think was the big thing. I would say a cautionary tale for sure is make sure you do your research when you want to meet certain personalities, because sometimes it's a long day and you think someone is this person and then they end up not being that person. You kind of mix them up a little bit. I got a little flustered where I wanted to meet an ESPN anchor, and turned out that they were somebody else because I was like caught in like the whole heat of the moment. So I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, but they were so nice about it. They played it off. I won't say who it was, but if they're watching this or happen to see it, you might know what event we're talking about. So once again, just make sure you do your research, know exactly who you want to talk to and things like that.
Sharon, do you have best and worst?
Best experience I talked about, that was meeting to Prawn which was at my worst convention experience ever. So, I mean, I think it just instantly told me what kind of organization AAJ is, right? It's like, you know, experienced journalists who are looking to help younger journalists come up the chain. Worse things, cautionary tips. I have two. One is kind of related to what Pablo said, which is just taking breaks and taking care of yourself. Like, journalists are super driven people. Like Natasha's talking about working that job fair and not eating lunch. Pablo mentioned knowing to like take a bottle of water. I mean, I will go up to my hotel room and take breaks as needed when I just need to. And I mean, broadcast journalists tend to be more extroverted than people who are coming from newspapers or even digital tend to be. So like, I need some alone time to level up. So I try not to pack. It's really easy to pack yourself back to back to back to back. And at the end of it, you have your batteries are empty and you end up mixing people up or, you know, like, or even worse, ill, right? Like you see people who can get physically ill during the conference or after the conference because they're trying to do too much. So that's it. That is one. And the other is just like really think of this as like that, going back to the idea of the gym class, like you're going to see these people year after year after year. So there's a balance between feeling so formal, like every interaction you have is a job interview, but it's also not your college dorm party, right? Like people will remember what you did 10 years ago at the barbecue or the AJ's summer jam. Like they will remember. And so I mean, and that applies to a whole host of things, right? Like hooking up with people or like getting super drunk. Like those are just things to remember. Like if this is a conference you want to come back to each year and not feel embarrassed or have stories follow you around, think about that in the moment.
I definitely would agree with that cautionary tale. Luckily, I haven't observed anything firsthand that was super egregious, but it just in the sense that when we talk about like, hey, you could have one of those connecting conversations in an elevator or at the lobby bar. Yes, you can, which means that you should always think that somebody is, you know, meeting you for the first time. You're always making that first impression, right? You want to have fun and you want to be yourself, but also like if it's not something that you want out there on your public social media channel, then you probably shouldn't do it, right? You don't want to do something where somebody could get a picture of you or you know, take video of this moment and have it all over the internet. Like that's the last thing you need from a convention. But you know, so again, it's like Sharon said, it's that fine line between being always presentable and always polite, watching what you're saying, and you know, having fun and being not super uptight either. You decide where that line is for you and what purpose you're serving at the convention. I think that the best thing that happened to me, obviously I've mentioned I've gotten 2 jobs out of conventions. One of them, though, happened kind of in a circuitous way because I was at the Cox Media Group booth hoping to talk to somebody who was at a station in my hometown in San Francisco. And I thought, wouldn't that be great if I could work in my hometown? So I was waiting for her because she was talking to someone else at the time. And you'll find this at career fairs. Popular people have a line waiting for them. But there was a person next to her at the same booth who wasn't doing anything. Nobody was in front of him. So I struck up a conversation with him while I was waiting for her. It turns out that he was with their sister station in Seattle. And so that conversation happened, and you know, I didn't think anything would come of it. And 3 months later, I get this phone call saying like, hey, our guy saw you at the convention and brought home your reel. And I'm like, that could have been a moment where I could have just stood there in line and did nothing. But, you know, kind of be aware of what's happening around you. Just because somebody is not like the popular person that everyone's waiting for, it doesn't mean they're not worth speaking to. Every little thing can lead to something else. And I would say another friend of mine had a similar situation. Well, I wouldn't say it's entirely similar, but had a similar situation of a small thing leading to something, which was he didn't think he was going to go downstairs to the bar that night and decided on a whim that he would just go sit there. And it turns out the person sitting next to him led to his next job. So you never know what's going to happen. That's kind of best case scenario. Yeah. And so Pablo, do you have any thoughts? I know we're getting to the last few minutes here. Closing message to people coming for the first time. Yeah.
Whoa. Let's see. I'll try to keep it so much. Actually, one thing I wanted to talk about too, in terms of, you know, keeping an eye out around. Actually, another thing that I want to point out at the career fair too is the free headshot photo booth.
Oh yeah.
That is totally something that, if you want to go into in general though too, I mean, having a headshot is just a great thing for LinkedIn pages, for just more professional things as well. And I'm not sure who hosts it, but there is a free headshot photo booth every year. It's free to go, and you'll get emailed. Fox News. Fox News is the one who hosts the booth, and you'll go up there. You'll just put your name and your email down. They'll take, I believe, 2 to 3 pictures at a couple different angles, and you'll receive an email within a few weeks, and that's it. That's how you have your free headshot. And it's a phenomenal job too by our photographers as well. So that is definitely something on a side note that I would really recommend, especially if you don't have a headshot yet. For those that are going to be there for first year, early career, definitely recommend stopping by, because you're going to get a great product, and for free too. You can't beat free really in this situation. But going back to that, embrace challenges. Embrace challenge. Once again, who you're going to meet, because once again, me meeting Howard Chen, he introduced me to so many different people. And on top of that too, that's how basically, if it wasn't for AAJA, if it wasn't for meeting Howard and Josh and so many other people, I wouldn't have the connections that I have today. But more importantly too, you know, I wouldn't be in the position to be at local NBA games and do that type of coverage on air, which is just something that still I have a crazy time wrapping my mind around. So if it wasn't for meeting these people in AAJA, I probably wouldn't be in this position now. And I was super excited too, just to talk to people too and receive that feedback. That's a big thing too. Everybody is at the convention, whether it's recruiters, you know, peers, whoever it may be, they're there to help you out. So try to be as receptive to constructive criticism as you possibly can. You know, just because something in your reel that you absolutely love, don't necessarily be too married to it. There's a reason why somebody's telling you, hey, you know what, I like this clip, but maybe we should put this towards the end, or it kind of jumps around. Once again, everyone's just there to help you out. And if you can try to be on top of your game from there and just take as many notes as you can, collect business cards too. Make a little bit of a game out of it too with yourself, and do that. That's those are just a bunch of other things too. But so many things just come to mind. Enjoy the conference though too, and that's what I could say.
Sharon, closing thoughts?
So my number one tip I shared at the beginning was show up. Second one was prepare yourself, right? With that elevator pitch line Natasha talked about, the 60-second and the 2-minute version of this. The third piece of, I guess the piece of advice that I'll leave is actually Ted Kim mentioned it in last year's Google Hangout, which is actually excellent. I highly recommend, if you want to go deeper and do more preparation, to go back and watch that recording as well, which is like, rather than thinking about it as networking, what if you just thought of it as making friends? Like, very simple. It's like way easier to start a conversation with a total stranger in the interest of making friends than in the interest of finding me a job. So it's not, you know, you don't like, you can be a shark, right? Like, I want to like go and find exactly what I want, and I smell blood, and I'm after making a connection with that person at the New York Times or NBC. It's not quite just hanging out either. It's like a little bit, it's like directed friend making is how I think about it. And I also just want to say, Amy, I'm happy to buy your barbecue ticket as well. Thank you for being on the Hangout, and thank you for asking a question. So find me, and then Pablo, you and I will figure out how I can pay for this for her.
All right.
I just want to mention a few things, a few takeaways for you, especially if you're going to the AAJA18.org website to learn more about the convention details. One thing is AAJA18.org/resumes. You can submit your resume through Recruiter Plus all the way up through Sunday, July 29th. So that is a good way for recruiters and people who are at the convention to see your resume ahead of time. So yes, you will introduce yourself and probably give them another copy when you see them in person, but this way they have you on file. Again, that's the AAJA website /resumes. And in fact, I think that's how my agent first found me. So that's a good one to do. Another is free expert advice from SAG-AFTRA representatives, SAG-AFTRA being the union for on-air folks. Now, this isn't just limited to broadcast on-air journalists. They can also offer advice about contracts, legal advice, questions about safety on the job. So they have office hours that you can sign up for. There's still some appointments available, as well as walk-ins, or I guess, sorry, walk-in appointments still available, and you can sign up for that right there on the site that you see. So those are the AAJA website key points that you should look into, in addition to, you know, putting your schedule together. My own personal last bit, a little trick that I have is that I have this app that I downloaded called Cam Card, C-A-M like Mary, Cam Card. And it's basically an app that takes pictures of every single business card you put in front of it, and it automatically loads the information so that you're not like putting every little piece of information and email and phone number into your phone by hand. It's not a perfect science, but it definitely saves me a ton of time, especially when I have this many business cards that I want to save into my contacts. So Camcard is useful for me. This has been an awesome hour talking with the two of you. Thank you so much for spending your time, and thank all of you for joining us and giving us your questions. Those of you who could not join us, this will be posted later, so please feel free to continue sending in questions, and we'll try and check back in and answer some of those. Again, if you are newish to AAJA, come find us if you see us in person, because we would love to meet you. So there we have it. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of the night, and we'll see you in Houston. Bye, everybody.